The Fractal Terra has a critical design flaw, and I'll prove it to you using science. The Terra is a beautiful case. The green, the wood, the compact size, but unfortunately it's not just a decorative piece. It has a function to serve, and for me, it wasn't cutting it. The Fractal Terra has a major design flaw, namely its airflow. If we take a look at the front profile of the case, you have the GPU on the left, the power supply, and the CPU on the right, and then one spot for an exhaust fan at the bottom of the case. Now there's way too much stuff above this exhaust fan for it to be able to get any kind of meaningful flow through the case and out the top, so it only makes sense to point it downwards and exhaust out the bottom of the case. Exhausting out the bottom of a PC case does not work. Let me prove it to you. As the fans in these components push air through their heat sinks, the air cools them in a process known as forced convection. This means that the air itself is taking away heat from the heat sinks. So it's going to be hot once it passes through and ends up inside the case. But then we have the exhaust fan pushing all that hot air out the bottom and out the sides. Problem solved. Wrong. Heat rises. When you push hot air out the bottom, it will rise back up. And where is it going to come back up? Right in front of those intake fans that are supposed to be bringing cool air in to cool your components. If it's not obvious enough why this is an issue, let's take a look at my heat transfer equation that I learned in my university thermodynamics class. And if you need credentials, here's my bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering. So I didn't just Google this stuff. So we have Q dot equals HA T2 minus T1. Q dot is the heat transfer rate. So how much heat transfer is happening between the heatsink fins and the air flowing through them. H is a heat transfer coefficient, which is a combination of a bunch of things, but in this case, we can just consider it a constant. A is the surface area where the heat transfer is happening. So in this case, the area of the heatsink fins, also a constant. And then we have T2 and T1. T2 is the temperature of the air before it passes through the heat sinks, and T1 is the temperature of the heatsink fins before the air passes through them. Since H and A are constants, we can kind of just combine them, and it would be fair to say that the rate of heat transfer, in this case cooling, of the system is directly proportionate to the difference in temperature between the air coming in and the temperature of the heatsink itself. Simply put, the colder the air coming in, the more ability it has to take heat away from those heat sinks. So if you have hot air being exhausted out the bottom and eventually rising up the sides to become the air that's supposed to be cooling your components, you're gonna end up with an endless heat cycle that'll almost never stabilize in temperature. But what if you change your CPU cooler fans from intake to exhaust? Will that fix the problem? No. It's kind of the same issue. Because this case uses a sandwich layout, the air that's going to be pushed through that heatsink is going to be the exhaust from your power supply and your graphics card. So that air is already going to be hot. The Fractal Terra is a great PC case, but if you have high power components inside of it and are facing the same thermal issues like I am, let me know down in the comments what your solution was. Through the process of this build, I've come up with 4 solutions. The first one is that you can undervolt your components so that they produce less heat. There are tons of guides all over Reddit and YouTube on how to do this, so I tried it, and it did help, but the 13700K is just such a hot chip. It was still thermal throttling under load, and that's just not something that I was comfortable with leaving. But for those of you who may have slightly less power hungry chips, undervolting could be a perfect solution for you. The second is to beef up your cooling. In this system, I use the NHL 12 Ghost S1 edition, but Knoxville recently released the NHL 12 SX77, which is pretty much specifically designed for this case. TechNotice used it in their ultimate small form factor build, and on a 13600K, it did alright. I've also seen builds on Reddit where people are putting little tiny fans up at the top so that you can exhaust some of that hot air out the top, and even some people attaching some AIO radiators to the outside of the case, which is kind of extreme, but if that's the way you want to go, have at it. The third option is what Rillo did with his build, and he pretty much just swapped in less powerful components because he had some laying around. But not everyone's got an extra 12700K just chilling. So the last solution is to get a different case with a new cooling solution, and that's what I did. I'll have a reveal video soon, so subscribe so you guys don't miss that. But in the meantime, let me know what you guys think of the Fractal Terra. Have you guys had similar experiences, or am I just dumb for expecting to be able to cool a 13th gen Intel CPU in this size case? Let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.